Hey guys, I'm Patrick Murray from Channel 10. I'm going to give you a couple tips on broadcast writing. Now to me, the thing you need to think of when you think of broadcast writing, the one word is conversational. You want to write the way you talk. Maybe not quite as informally as the way you would talk, but you get the general idea. You want to write the way you talk because you're going to be talking on air, or someone is going to be talking what you wrote on air. So that's the point. You're writing for the ear, not for the eye. And I think that's actually a little bit easier once you really get the flow of it. I think it's easier to write for broadcast than it is for print, just because, I mean, you're writing the way you talk, and that's something that you do all the time. So to me, once you get in the flow of it, it's a little bit easier to do. But when you first get started, I think it's harder because you're so used to writing for a class, writing papers for a class or something like that, where you're writing formally, and then, or writing for print where it's a little bit more formal. So I think it's kind of harder to get going on it because you tend to want to write the way you do for class or for print or something like that. But you just got to practice at it and get working at it, and you'll be fine. You just want to think to write conversationally, and keep in mind that someone is going to be reading this out loud. No one's going to be reading this on a piece of paper or on a newspaper or on a website, something like that. No one needs to see it, but someone has to say it out loud, and then people have to listen to it. So that's what you want to keep in mind. Your viewer is not going to be reading what you write. They're not going to be seeing what you write. So it doesn't have to be pretty. It doesn't, maybe it doesn't have to have quite the right punctuation. Maybe it has less punctuation, or the punctuation is different. Like, for example, when I'm writing for myself to read, I typically like to use ellipses, like maybe 3 or 4 periods instead of a comma, just because I think it's easier on the prompter, which I'll show you in a second. It's easier to see on the prompter. If you had a comma next to a big, those big capital letters on the prompter, a little bit harder to see. So to me, when I see the ellipses, I know that means, hey, give a little bit of a pause there, like you would for a comma. And then another thing to think about along those same lines is you can put emphasis on words. So like, there may be certain words that you want to put emphasis on air, so you want to do that in your script. You may put a couple of asterisks around that word to tell yourself, hey, emphasize that word, or something like that. And that's something that you can do in broadcast because no one's actually going to see it. So when I'm doing a sportscast, or when I'm doing a report from the studio at the station, here's what I'm seeing. I'm looking at the camera, and it's got the prompter right there. So this is what, keep in mind that this is what you're writing for, is someone to read this right here. And our big topic yesterday was Ken Sparks retiring from Carson Newman. So here's one of the stories that I wrote yesterday. And you got to keep in mind where you want the video to be taken. That's another difference in TV. You got to remember that you have video, and you want to designate where you want the video to be. And you see here, here's an example of where I use the ellipses instead of a comma. Basically, same thing as where you would put a comma. It just tells you to give a little bit of a pause. That's just my style, how I like to write for myself. Another thing to keep in mind with broadcast writing is your viewer is probably only going to hear what you say one time. Whereas if it was a newspaper, if they wanted to, they could go back and read a sentence again, but that's probably not going to happen on TV. So you want to keep your sentences and what you're writing, you want to keep it less complicated, maybe shorter sentences, and you want to make sure that they understand what you're saying the first time, because they're not going to go back and see what you said. You don't want them saying, what did he say, or that didn't make any sense. You want to make sure that it's shorter and more to the point, so they know what you're saying. In broadcast, you're probably not going to have as much time as you would in print, or especially on a website, to talk about your topic that you're talking about. You got to keep things short. You got to be brief, kind of hit the highlights, know the main points that you want to hit. You're not going to be able to flesh out every detail. So that's kind of a hard part too, is being able to take a story or take something that you know and break it down to the most important things that your viewer needs to know about it. Another difference between print and broadcast writing is covering a game, or the game story. In print, you would call it a game story. In TV, you call it a highlight. And so in print, you're probably writing in that inverted pyramid style, where the first thing you're going to mention may be the final score, or the best play of the game, or what decided the outcome of the game. That's not the case in TV. In TV, you're going to try to create some drama. You're going to start from the beginning of the game and work your way to the end, or at least that's typically how you're going to do it. So that's quite a bit different there. And the highlight is where you get even more informal when you're talking about TV. When I'm writing a highlight, I write very few things. I may only write, say for a high school football highlight, I may write Farragut, Adam Fulton to whatever the receiver's name is, 56-yard touchdown. That may be all I write, and then I'm kind of talking about what I see on the video. So when I do it on TV, I may just say what I see on the video, but I have the players' names there so I know them. So that's totally different than what you would do for print. I hope that all made sense. I hope this helped you out. Just remember, you're writing conversationally. You want to write basically how you talk. You want to think about telling a story to someone, and you want to remember that you're writing for the ear, you're writing for someone to hear this, you're not writing for someone to read it on a piece of paper. That's the most important thing to remember. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. pmurray2@wbir.com is my email. It's pmurray2@wbir.com. Send me any questions you have. I'd be happy to help you out if I can.